Here's Brody Brazil.
It did get messy fast, and I think a reason why it got messy so fast is kind of a statement on the media today, and we're both part of the media, so we are well-versed in how this happens, but a national writer misinterpreted a comment from an interview that wasn't available online yet. Everyone ran with it,
Right.
And then what happens is aggregators from every major media outlet start posting links and stories all based off that first comment, right?
Exactly.
And that is kind of a problem with how the media works today, right?
And when he said things like, yeah, the A's can't play at the Coliseum 5 more years, that's not new, right? The fact that the Coliseum is not up to the standard of other facilities, that's not new. But none of that, of course, got included. And even when asked, when Chris Russo asked the commissioner, Rob Manfred, so you're saying it's likely that they'll move. And he said, I did not say that. But somehow that ended up in a tweet that the A's were likely to be moving to Las Vegas, and it was all over. So, yeah, you're right. It quickly got turned, and it quickly got spread, and really before anybody could put the fire out, and like we were saying in part one, it wasn't until the actual audio surfaced, and you listen to it, and you're like, what? That's the takeaway from all this? So, but I just hope it didn't cause any damage, right? Like, because the common person may only see the headline, may only see the major news, and like you never know how far somebody took that to heart before they realized it's not how it played out. So it was rough.
Yes, so many people texted me that day like, oh, there you go, A's are leaving. And I'm like,
right.
How did you come to that conclusion?
I thought that until
the same thing he's always been saying.
I thought it until I heard the full context of the clip. And I would also say too, we're heavy into the Oakland side. We're on every, last word of, well, what's he saying? What does it mean? What's behind this? But the fact that even in what he said was kind of just, it was mild on Oakland. Like, again, nothing really new, nothing bold, nothing earth-shattering other than the obvious. But then he goes out and says, oh, but Tampa is going to stay in Tampa. Like, pretty much, I mean, okay, so maybe he didn't say that, but it was to the extent of Tampa's good. Tampa's going to be fine. I got a lot of confidence in what they're doing. What? Why wouldn't you say that about Oakland first and question Tampa? I mean, Oakland's got binding votes. It's got an EIR. It's got a site. Does Tampa have any or all of that in the process? It was caught me off guard. It really did.
I think maybe what Tampa has is it's probably a lot easier to build in Florida than it is in California.
Of course.
But what most importantly Tampa has is no other option, right? Like, remember when they floated the ridiculous, maybe they'll play half the games in Montreal and then play half the games in Tampa, which was the single dumbest idea I have ever heard for a professional sports franchise. That's terrible.
No player is going to want to go through that as the home team of the Rays and Montreal, because you got to move your family halfway through a baseball season. Unheard of, impossible. No way.
It makes no sense. So maybe what's happening here is Manfred is a lot more complimentary of Tampa because there's no Las Vegas to Tampa's Oakland. You know what I mean? Like here, he's trying to gin up this rivalry between Oakland and Las Vegas, try to gin up the leverage. If one side's pulling one way, the other side's pulling the other way, and then we'll get the sweetest deal possible for the billionaire owners. It's not really like that in Tampa, so what does he have to do other than to complement the process there? I mean, crapping on it's not really going to help anybody.
Hey, do you think, and we're obviously now heavy into the whole Tampa side of this, but this was all documented and covered by the national media, right? And I'm not here to knock them. I'm really not. And look, it was Bob Nightingale's tweet that started it all. Bob's fine. There's no problem there. I don't know that he's up to speed on the day-to-day of Howard Terminal or the A's or Las Vegas. Look, you and I are trying to be, but we're not invited to the meetings. We're not flying back and forth. We get what we get, but I'm saying the national media is even like 3 steps farther detached from that. So when they say these things, I don't think they even know like the fire they start sometimes or the beliefs that are laid out there that may not actually be accurate, or the magnitude of what they say, right? And people are going to buy into it. So not blaming anybody. I just think that was kind of rough how it played out.
I agree with you. And I'm going to say it like this. Look, Nightingale may not have fully understood the situation. If you hear somebody say, things aren't going well in Oakland, well, then the obvious conclusion is Vegas, right?
Right.
And I think in his mind, that's where he went. Like if the commissioner's saying he's not sure he sees it happening here,
right,
well, then that means it's happening in Vegas, right?
Right.
That's a natural conclusion to make for somebody that isn't like fully locked in, dialed in, paying attention to this every twist and turn like we are. In his defense, I will say that.
Yeah.
However, I think that it is sort of irresponsible to misquote somebody, and so that blew up my whole day, probably a lot of your day. And
I was doing a whole
lot of damage control,
doing
to
a
get
hockey game,
real information out to combat the aggregators at that point.
Hey, what did you also think of Chris Russo's interviewing style? And again, he's somebody who is from the opposite coast, has I think some connections out here, but I feel like to ask those bold questions to Major League Baseball's commissioner, and he's like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but they're leaving, right? They're leaving. And I'm not trying to get a soundbite, but they're leaving, aren't they? I'm like, of course you're trying to get a soundbite. My bro, you work in radio and the media. We're all trying to get sound bites. So I don't think there was no malice by what he did. But again, he's another person that is just like asking these questions. And the way he even set it up, they can't play there. That's a terrible stadium. It's okay. We get it, Chris, but like your approach and your language on this it seems like it has no like connection to reality here. Anyway, so
it's not the first time either that Mad Dog Chris Russo's kind of been out of touch on his comments when it comes to Oakland, the A's Stadium, the future of Oakland, et cetera. And he's in New York. I mean, I can't blame him for that either. And frankly, he's an OG. That's just his interview style. So, I mean, it just is what it is.
Did you like my impersonation, by the way?
It was really good. And I actually remember when Draymond got mad at him and started calling him Bad Dog instead of Mad Dog. That always cracks me up. But you know what? In defense of him, I don't think he did anything wrong in his line of questioning. I know he was leading, but then Manfred said, I didn't say that.
Right.
That's just how he's going to do his interview, and that's fine. The problem was how it was then interpreted.
Right.
And if you remember, like when Nightingale's tweet came out, when I did my like quote tweet clap back to set the scene and like, try to explain it to everybody what's going on here, the very last thing I literally said in that tweet is, has anybody seen a link for this interview? Because I can't find it and I need to hear it to know what the heck's going on.
Right.
And then to credit Chris Russo's people, they then posted the interview.
Right.
And that's when we all heard it. And I quickly transcribed it and tweeted that because I was like, everyone has to see what he really said. Like what he really said isn't what's being run with here.
Yeah.
And so, I don't really blame Russo or Russo's people or anybody at Mad Dog Unleashed. I think it was more about how the information was interpreted. And that to me was the major problem. And you noticed this, Brody, this is where it got interesting. Because you actually did a really good video, recapping everything that happened on that Saturday. And, that tweet where I think it was Britt Giroli who said, Manfred said he's not talking about Oakland anymore, and we want to, talk about this, gesturing to what was going on the playing field.
Right.
I think Manfred made these comments on Russo's show. I think they were innocuous. I mean, it's the same thing he's been saying for years now, and it got interpreted wrong and blew up. Then when the writers approached him about it, I don't think he really understood that they were misinterpreted and put out kind of in a way he didn't understand.
Right.
Because he said the words, he said the same thing he's always been saying. Why is that suddenly major news?
Right.
And he was approached like it was major news. He probably didn't even see the Nightingale tweet. Then you'll notice once he probably saw or his staff saw the Nightingale tweet, what happened next? He did an interview with the LA Times, Bill Shaken, great writer at the LA Times.
That's right.
Where he explained it in greater detail. He did come back and answer the questions and clear the air with one of his guys in Shaken. And basically really went against everything that was implied in that Nightingale tweet. So I think at the time, I don't think he knew that the information he put out was spun the wrong way. And then when he realized it was, he quickly got the word out to Shaken, who's a big, well-known, respected writer, to clear the air. I think that's kind of how it all played out to me.
The precise quote, though, "I'm done talking about Oakland," end quote. It was like, okay, wait a second. You opened up that can and then you slapped us in the face and then you walked away. But to your point, I don't think anybody had fully grasped what happened and what got ran with,
including him, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where I defend him. I really think he should talk to me. I think he should talk to you. Heck, he should talk to both of us.
Well, speaking of that,
we should talk to Manfred. He should talk to someone who actually knows what's happening.
A certain sports network has told young Brazil, I'm not young anymore, you might be going to San Diego for winter meetings because we want to set up this conversation. Now, look, I don't know, based on the firestorm the last time he brought it up, Manfred did, like, is he or his people, are they going to be willing to like go into, but I would love to have an educated discussion with him. And I understand he's going to be guarded. I understand it's a negotiation. I understand he represents all the teams and the A's too, but I just want to try and actually humanize like where he's at on this, what he sees from, 35,000 feet. So I hope it is a possibility, but at this point, I don't know if he will.
I was really hard on him a year ago. It was about a year ago this time when he said that he didn't see a path to success in Oakland.
Yeah.
I was very hard on him on social media. I'm sure he didn't see it. Maybe he did. But then a couple weeks later, Oakland got the EIR certified, and I reached out to him, and he did actually respond to my email.
Yeah.
And that was cool because that helps. Like, it really helps to have the people in charge of things actually respond when you reach out, because how else are you going to tell the story correctly?
Yeah.
And the thing I take from it, and I take from this the same way with these most recent comments, he's still referring to Las Vegas as the alternative, right?
Is that where we're going next? Because there's a lot to get to there we haven't even really touched on.
I say we do, because he is referring to Las Vegas as the alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Oakland's the plan. Vegas is the alternative. That's the way it's always been, and that's the way it still is.